And we're back! So, we're here for the round table of the last part of Group A. Animated Jake, would you please remind everybody what the topic is for this round table today?
Totally. The topic is the importance of storytelling. And of course, within a light show, but in general, why is it important to be able to share a story with your movement?
Awesome. And
Wow. Go
I
ahead,
was,
Eddie.
I was going to say, Josh, I believe the word that you used was narrative structure.
Yes. I was just going to interject with the idea that humans don't actually communicate with ideas. We communicate with stories for the most part.
Mm.
And if you want to know more about that idea, just kind of look at the way that mythos and morals have been passed around through the generations. It's basically through stories. Um,
Mm.
but what's interesting about the narrative structure is I was talking about this in the rounds a lot because it helps people understand speed control. It helps people understand combinations of tricks. It helps people understand how to place their techniques in their light show, how to progress their techniques throughout their light show. All of these things come together, and it really makes for the ability to have a light show that is unique and interesting and entertaining without having too much technique or complexity involved. I mean, you can have that complexity and technique involved, but you don't need it. If you have all those other things, you don't need it.
Mm.
One thing I want to touch on, and I think that Trump, especially with your scorecard focus, will be able to really dive in on this, is the idea that complexity can either tell your story or blur your story. In that sometimes people will do so much and so many things, and it was just there was no story behind. You're like, I know that everything you did was amazing, but I did not follow it. Whereas there are people, and the greatest example I will use is Physic. Physic was a great example of someone who can do incredibly complex and impossible things, and you understood and digested every single piece of his entire light show, even though you had to watch it 50 times.
It's the difference between tech vomit and an actual story. Like,
So
I think
Trump,
I've watched like one physics show.
man, my brain goes back to the light show he did to the Veld, and if you guys have not seen that light show, it's 9.5 years later, it lives in my brain rent free.
Wow.
So
But Trump, I wanted to ask you specifically because you're
Mhm.
someone who does it well. Your shows have
I do?
complexity. Yeah.
I don't know what my shows look like, dog.
You're,
But no,
you
I
I'm just
absolutely know what you
saying
mean.
you
I-
you do complex stuff, and like I know that you threw a lot at me, but I still feel like I understood it the whole time. I don't. It's not tech vomit.
Yo,
It's not tech vomit at all. And
hear me out, brother. I have been told this so many times when I show people moves that I do. They're like, "Oh, that's actually really simple." I'm like, "Yes, a lot of the stuff that I do is relatively simple once you understand, how to do it. And even concepts that are less tangible, like storytelling, once you understand how to do it, it almost becomes second nature because that's just how you end up doing it. So you can take a more complex move, for example, and once I break it down to someone, they're like, "Oh, that's like super simple." I'm like, "Yes, all you have to do is take the time to understand it." And the same goes exactly for storytelling. Um, and might I add that there is such beauty in simplicity.
Mm.
I cannot. I'm gonna. I hope I'm not mean to people, but most of the people that started gloving around my generation, I'm around like the little bit past the 4 year mark right now. A lot of people that I see, coming up with me in gloving and whatnot and posting,
too
they
obsessed
don't
with
do that
complex.
many light shows, or sorry, they don't do many finger rolls. Like I feel like I do a lot of finger rolls. I do at least one, minimum one, in every single show that I throw. Still to this day, and I will watch so many shows and not see finger rolls.
Man, it has almost nothing to do with storytelling, but it kind of does. But
It
I
does.
maintain this. I maintain this position that if you cannot throw a 3 minute light show with just finger rolls, You should just be able to.
I used to do
You
that
should.
with a lot of concepts, and I think I might have gotten that idea from you. Like
That's
year
the way
year
to
one.
that's the way to perfect any concept is figure out how to throw 2.5 minutes, two to 2.5 minutes of just that concept without
I
repeating
am
yourself.
a firm
And
advocate for that method as well.
so
And if you don't
Can
want a hard
attest.
time limit, then you should be able to find a nice long song or an extended mix and do
I
the
wouldn't even say a
intro.
long song, just a
Well,
normal song.
what I'm saying is the intro, the first build up, the first drop, first breakdown, second build up, second drop, an entire second breakdown,
right.
all
Mhm.
without dipping out of a single concept. You should be in just wave tutting or in just, finger rolls or whatever it is that you're focusing.
Real
Right.
quick, can we get a breakdown from probably Josh or Teddy? Um, what is the perfect or the ideal progression of a light show?
I think
Can we outline that real quick?
so.
Well,
I really try to steer away from saying this is the perfect X, regardless of whatever X
Right,
is, because
right. Concepts go wherever you want concepts to go, but
yeah,
I
I
think
think
what he means is what is the narrative structure, and I mentioned this throughout the episode, throughout the actual judging part. But the introduction of a light show, what you should be doing is you should be setting up the space that you're going to use in the light show. You shouldn't overwhelm with complexity. You shouldn't overwhelm with speed. You should be drawing in the focus and trying to squeeze wring every last bit of anticipation out of the introduction. Then the soundscapes of the song are going to start building. And as that happens, you're going to start layering in your complexity. You're going to start layering in your techniques. You're going to start layering in more movement, but also more complexity with those techniques. Then you're going to be building up to the drop, right? So the build up and the drop, you're going to be uh, going ham with your speed. You're going to be increasing your speed to the max. You're you're gonna you're gonna be prioritizing your huge wavy moves, your huge traily moves, your power moves, anything that's gonna make the crowd scream. Save that for the drop. Then there's the breakdown of the song, right? So that's when you start using the complexity, the speed, and the space all together. Then there's the conclusion. But what's interesting is with a story, it's one hump, but with a song, it's all over the place, right? So it
It
goes
could be
introduction,
very
build up, drop, and then it builds up again, drop, builds up again, drop, builds up again, drop, right? So there's an hour and a half of build up and drop before the actual final conclusion of the song if you're at a live performance, right? So our job as the common light show artist is to find that sweet spot of attention span so that we can make that audience or that viewer
viewer.
want more of the performance at the end rather than them getting bored and asking you to stop because that person's not coming back then.
so. While I don't disagree with anything Josh said being a proper way to do a light show and a good way to do it, I want again to just put a giant asterisk there that is all like the structure is there, but
There's
the
exceptions to everything.
the
There's
idea of like
you learn the rules
you
before you
based
break the rules.
you
Yes.
based your entire theory around the idea they were starting at the beginning of a song. I've seen a lot of Glovers that will start literally at the drop or at the climax or at the buildup of a song, or they'll start on a specific lyric because they want the first moment of their show to be that, or they'll start their show with one crazy move and then draw you back down.
And
As
that
if
always comes back to intention, Teddy, because any rule that you make in any art form, you can break that rule if you're doing it intentionally. You can break any rule in any art form as long as there's an intention and willfulness behind it. There is something that you're going for. If you're just breaking the rule because you're absent-minded, chances are you're wasting potential is what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
That's both very valid points.
Yes, no, that's a good balance there. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like those, like you are describing rules, but you're also saying, hey, these are rules, but also break these rules.
Again, it comes down to
So I
the
guess what
master.
you're saying is they're more of guidelines than actual rules.
Exactly. Like you have to learn the parameters of the art form in order to be able to expand the parameters of the art form. In order to break the rules correctly, you have to learn them first. That's the
That's
only
fair.
way it works.
I miss one.
Totally.
Fantastic. Well, anyway, guys, thank you so much. This has been an absolutely fantastic. Actually, before we close this out, I do want to say, Animated J, we've all talked a lot on this one. So, as someone who has participated in multiple types of battles and competitions, correct me if I'm wrong, but gloving is the only competitive, the only type of dance competition that you've participated in that actually measures the idea of a story in weight of the show or the performance.
Totally. And I feel like we talked about this before
We
about
have touched on it a little bit, but
you know,
let's do it again.
So yeah, I mean, again, I feel like you in the gloving community, you guys have a scorecard. You have a really defined way of judging things versus in street band like popping or crumping or it's like the bigger events, yeah, there's like a score way of a system of judging, but for the most part, it's just like they sit there, they watch it, and then after they're done, they're like, okay, 3, 2, 1, who do you like? You just point to who you feel, and that causes a lot of
Yeah.
politics, and people don't want to go to events because they feel like, oh, they're whatever. But can you repeat your question again about storytelling, Teddy?
So gloving is unique in that we do measure that in a competitive aspect. We do. Someone can win or lose if they did or did not tell a story. So, as
Correct.
someone who's not used to that competitively, how does that change of you? Do you think it's necessary elsewhere? Do you
Right. So I think, and I'll say it again, like you can kill it with both. You could be really crazy with stories or real fundamental, very, clean foundations. You can do both. I think that in battles, for the most part, there's an emphasis on like, oh, that's an adorable cat. There's an emphasis more on like, don't get too much in performing to the audience. Don't get too much performing to the judges. You need to battle instead of like trying to win the crowd. But then there's people that say, but hey, like, there's both ways
crowd
of
reactions
right,
reactions matter.
it plays a role. Now there are some events, like for instance, Battle Fest, where they are very performance. Like if you don't have a performance, you're not going to like get past because it's set up as like a performance. So I guess it really depends on the context of the event itself. Some people, again, they want to see, like, they just want you to go and kill it and direct to your opponent. Other people, they want to see a show, a performance. So
All right. Well, awesome. Well, cool, guys. Well, thank you for that. That's I love all these conversations. I love the topics we've got going on. I love the fact that Trump has a cat on screen. That's great. This is all good things. I'm loving all of it. I'm here for all of it, and I really appreciate you guys doing this, and I appreciate all of you that are watching at home. I hope you guys are enjoying what we're putting out so far, and we've got a lot more to come. So, thank you, Animated J, Jest, and Trump. We will see you guys for the rest of round 1.